an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood, episode 54, Beyond the Inferno. In this episode, we find out exactly why envy is envy. And it's interesting because I had sort of posited a lot of vague theories, and what it winds up being is pretty good. I like this. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. So, this episode begins with Hawkeye and a memory of her crying over the grave of an Ishvalan child, as she basically accuses Roy Mustang of misusing the information from her father's research. Guys, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I remembered that she had this tattoo. I did not remember almost anything else about what the significance of this tattoo actually was. And I know we've been told, but there has also been a whole lot of information in this show. So it surprises me actually a little bit that there wasn't more of a step-by-step reminder, considering how many episodes ago that information was shared. Because I'm watching these pretty close together, 2 a week. And if I forgot, I have to assume people watching in the regular schedule forgot. But I also am not certain just how much information we've been given, because I know we were given some. I remember the episode focusing on the tattoo and the reveal of this information existing, but I don't remember enough details about it to say whether or not we're, as an audience, supposed to be working with all the information at this point or not. So if anybody feels like reminding me what was going on here, what I'm taking away from this is basically that the flame alchemy that Roy Mustang is working with is super unnatural and something that isn't how alchemy is supposed to work, in quotes. I say supposed to, but it's sort of looking like the alchemy that the Elric brothers and everybody else also use isn't quite it either. If we're going with alchemy being the thing that's most in sync with the universe, because the vibe I've been getting is that alchemy is tainted somehow due to the presence of the homunculi and them changing the way that alchemy actually works. But that's all theoretical for me. I don't know. But Roy's glove and the fact that he needs a glove and can't simply use an element or create an element out of thin air. It's you have to create the flame in order to manipulate the flame, because the material you are using alchemy on has to exist in front of you for you to affect it. So this alchemical glove that has this symbol on it, and he snaps his fingers and creates this flame that he can then manipulate, he's evidently the only person alive who can do this, the only one who ever had access to this information. And it's really interesting to me because of the weakness that he has, where if he gets wet, it's just essentially useless. It's just really funny how what he does is very powerful, but it also has such an intense Achilles heel. And I feel like that's only appropriate. You can't have something that's this powerful and not have any check to it at all, because that's just too OP. But it is funny that it's genuinely just don't get it wet. It's like a fucking iPhone, you know? Damien says it's just extremely dangerous. As you could see from these episodes, the flame alchemy in the wrong hands. Tyler says, and the tattoo on her back is the key to making the flame alchemy work. Right. But when I'm saying I don't remember, I don't recall. Did we meet her father? Did we like see him coming up with this alchemy? And I don't remember her approach. Like, I'm assuming she approached Roy and told him, this is my father's research, and he didn't want it in the wrong hands and showed it to him. But I don't remember that scene. And I don't remember if it was like, maybe something went particularly wrong in a battle and she felt like, I didn't want to dip into this power, but we might lose if we don't. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to show you a secret weapon that we could potentially use. I don't remember anything surrounding the circumstances of her sharing this and him finding out and her father. That's the stuff that I'm kind of not remembering. So yeah. And it's just interesting because Damien's saying, as you can see from these episodes, the flame alchemy in the wrong hands. And like, yeah, but it's like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem that much worse than any other alchemy. Yeah, he's doing something really fucked up, but you can do fucked up with all the alchemy if you decide to direct it that way. I think it's interesting that the flame alchemy is seen as like particularly a danger when we've got Kimberly just collapsing entire cities full of people with, granted, he needs a philosopher's stone to do it, but it's still regular alchemy. You know what I mean? So I understand that, like, I can see why some people might have a different reaction to flame alchemy, but I don't really understand it being seen as so much worse than regular alchemy. B. Morris says, alchemy basically works on conservation of mass, but it clearly defines conservation of energy. Alchemy basically lets you rearrange matter without much restriction on energy. So the most powerful alchemy is the one which can most readily and quickly invest energy into their alchemy and then release it. Accelerating a pillar of earth isn't much compared to being able to separate and then detonate water into hydrogen explosions. I mean, accelerating a pillar of earth isn't a fair comparison, though, is it? Like, you could just collapse a building on people. It's just, I mean, and the detonating the water, again, he needed a flame in order to do that. And the glove being wet, like, they needed to find another way to create a spark. It just seems like it has such a weakness that its overall, like, percentage of threat feels significantly affected by that to me. But I don't know. It's just the kind of thing that it really seems like it depends on whoever is using the regular alchemy. You could be very creative and decide to, like, completely fuck people up with it. B. Moore says, sure, but you'd have to build the building first. Well, no, I mean, we see, like, people cracking the ground underneath folks and just, like, if they're on any sort of unstable surface, you could just do that. You could crack the earth beneath their feet and have them drop. Like, I don't know. There's no point in this argument if the understanding is meant to be that flame alchemy is way worse and that's supposed to be what the audience believes. I'm willing to just be like, okay, sure. But personally, I just don't. We've seen the way that alchemy can be misused, and it's not flame alchemy, and it's still horrifically destructive. And you needed for Kimberly especially, a sorcerer's stone. I'm gonna do that every time. You needed a philosopher's stone for it to be quite as effective as it was, but you need a glove in order for flame alchemy to be effective. So I don't know. It doesn't seem to me like any worse. It's just about the hands that it's in. Are the only alchemies that we've seen. We've like, the point with Ed, of course, is that he's full metal. And so he works mostly with metal, and there's stone also has played in. We've seen the guy who uses ice, right? have we ever seen anything with wind? We've got like all the elements going on here, except wind. And I can't remember if that's represented at all or if that's just like kind of a non-thing. Which, if it's a non-thing, I have no problem with it. I was just sort of curious about it. I couldn't remember. But, all right. So let's start this actual episode. I talked about Hawkeye and her. She basically is just like, I thought that you were going to do some good with this, and you turned this into the actual worst thing. And I don't want anybody ever getting access to this information. And she says, I am begging you to disfigure my back because this can't fall into the wrong hands. And she essentially like makes him promise. He's horrified at this request to begin with. And of course, I'm sure no small measure of guilt at the fact that things he did with the flame alchemy have brought her to the point where she feels the need to do this in the first place. And he does agree. He says, I'll leave as little trace as I can, but clearly he does not like it. And that's the cold open. And then we go to the credits, and then we go to the rest of the episode. And we pick up right where we had left off with Hawkeye behind Roy. And it's a funny moment because Hawkeye, it turns out it is real Hawkeye, and that she has detected that this is not actually Roy. But the thing that's so funny is that she says to, quote, Roy, he always calls me Risa, I think she says, when we're alone together. And immediately Envy turns around and begins turning back into Envy and is like, oh, really? I didn't know that. And Hawkeye says, yeah, no, not really, but you fell for it. And I love this because what that means is that Hawkeye didn't have definitive proof, but she still knew, which means that she just knows Roy so well that the whole vibe was off immediately, and she didn't need him to make a particular mistake to know. She's just like, yeah, I don't think so. And I just love that. The idea that like, this is something that's so hard to quantify. And for somebody like me, who really thrives on definitive evidence and being logical about approaching a problem and a question, I can find it personally really frustrating, but there are things where the answer to the question doesn't have a definitive, this is why kind of answer. The question has an answer like, I don't know, I just think. I really think so. And what I hate is that I know that that's true and that there are some things like this. She knows it's Roy. How? Vibes are off. That's it. If she tried to say that to somebody and be like, no, I could just tell because the vibes were off, I feel like people would be like, but that was still a huge risk. And if you know, you're like, it really wasn't. I just knew. I was very sure. But in today's society, the idea of, I don't believe the evidence in front of me because I just don't think so. I just feel like no. Pretty sure that's wrong because I just don't feel like it's right. That has become such a thing that people do. And I hate the fact that I know that is actually a phenomenon that is real and valid, but also not like that. Guys, come on. There are things where definitive evidence and actual data is necessary, and just being like, it just feels right isn't the thing. Can we not? But the fact that this points to how well they know each other, and it's how well they know each other in a much deeper way than simply, for example, he has a mole on his face, like it had been with Ross. I don't know. I have been saying that I don't ship the two of them because I think that she deserves better than Roy. But they are doing a good job of developing the relationship between the two of them and making me feel like, okay, while I may not approve, it still feels real. And that I appreciate. That's, for me, the difficulty with writing romances is making it feel like people really have a genuine connection. Because there's a lot of the time where people will be written as allegedly attracted to each other and in love with each other, but when you're in their head or watching them interact, you're like, you guys barely seem like you like each other. You just fuck all the time. And that's not really the thing. So while I may not particularly like Roy, at least I am understanding that there is a real tie between the two of them that means a lot, you know? It would be interesting though. Like, I think that she's romantically interested, and it must be tough to be romantically interested in somebody that you feel sort of betrayed you in terms of like the usage of this flame alchemy and the information. But it seems like she's pretty much gotten over that by this point. So then we get the most beautiful moment ever, you guys. She says, the colonel called me by my first name, Riza. Envy says, so you two are that close, are you? And Hawkeye says, I lied, but it was still very nice for you to fall for it. Shoots Envy in midair. Shoots again. Shoots again. Shoots 4, 5, 6 more times. Runs out of ammo. Drops the gun. Reaches to the small of her back where she has 2 further pistols that she then draws and begins to fire. At this point, Envy finally begins to fight back, at which point Riza drops those pistols and pulls out a fucking rifle, which I don't know where she was keeping that. Maybe it was hung over her back and I missed that. And I cannot get enough of her having all the guns and just being like, you are going to die. I'm going to make it happen. Please die. That's all I'm looking for here. It's so cold and methodical, and absolutely, I am going to try and not even give you enough time to stand up between bullets. Oh, a queen, a complete queen. I love this so much. Eventually, Envy does wrap her up in like a sort of vine-ish tentacle thing and is in the middle of saying, I'll drop you at his feet like a rag. And then all of a sudden, here comes a massive like flame tornado, a flamado. And Envy is down. The tentacle dissolves. Hawkeye is released. And Roy comes walking back into the scene while Envy is being repeatedly lit on fire. And this is the moment where Hawkeye decides to step in. And it's really specific, the difference between what she was doing and what Hawkeye was doing. She's trying to kill Envy, but in a way that like, I just need to get this done. You need to die because you are a danger. You have to be taken off the board as a player. But Roy, when he walks in, he strolls up in a very, I'm intimidating kind of manner, walks up to Envy and says, what are you doing to my lieutenant? And Envy looks up at him with terror. Genuine, abject, like, oh shit kind of moment. And as he looks down on Envy, Envy's face sort of changes and goes from, I'm terrified to, I'm angry at the fact that you're terrifying me, which that makes sense. There is nothing like feeling helpless and being made to feel like really small and pitiful. And when somebody makes you feel that way, you can't help but just grow enraged at them. And Evie tries to do the you damn human, why can't you? And he just starts literally snapping in both directions. It is wild to watch. Apparently he's got a glove on both hands. So he's just fucking going for it. And eventually, fucking finally, has hit Envy with enough flame that the body begins to fall apart, and it's just that weird little tadpole that comes out again. And we get a sort of interesting bit here. Envy is this sad little tadpole crying about this again. I can't believe I'm this again. And Roy puts his foot on Envy, this little frog-like thing, and says, so is this your true form? You're ugly. Envy means jealousy. That's what your name means, right? I get it. And Envy starts saying, please don't. I don't want to die. And as Envy is crying out, no, don't, he's holding Envy in place with his foot and about to snap his fingers and says, now burn in hell. And Hawkeye stops him and says, enough, I'll deal with him from here. And Roy says, he's as good as gone already, lower your weapon. And begins to like get in her face about it. Is like, I won't ask again. And this is when Ed shows up and uses alchemy to flip the floor and toss Envy through the air into his waiting hand. And Roy tells Ed also, give it back. That's an order. I'll be taking it. And Ed just says, no, I don't think I'm going to do that, actually. And it's sort of, the implication here is that what he was doing was worse than what they would have done. He was about to just burn it to death again. And correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but Roy is the only one that has ever successfully gotten a homunculi to go down in its like human form, right? Nobody else has been successful. Or has... They killed Gluttony at one point and he came back, but I can't remember how he was killed. Because he comes back and then he winds up getting killed and like consumed by pride. So it's a very different situation with that one. But my question is, it seems like Roy has the only weapon that has ever worked on them. And I'm really curious what they're planning to do with Envy on their own to actually get rid of him. Other than more of the same, lighting him on fire. Like, I just don't really... I understand that the way that he was standing on Envy and holding him in place, that was really unnecessary and gross. Totally get that. But the actual act of executing Envy, which it looked like he was on the verge of doing in the way that he had managed to work Envy down from a human form into a tadpole form, that seems like the only way to do this that we have seen that works. And I'm just, why is it such a problem all of a sudden? You know, he was, I don't know. It just, there's a real sort of like line that the material is trying to emphasize you don't cross. And I feel like I don't agree with where the line is, or I feel they're not totally consistent with where they think the line is either. And I don't know. That's interesting. Tyler in the chat says, I think the real concern isn't really how he's killing Envy, more Mustang's mentality and how allowing him to finish it would affect him. Okay. See, my issue with that, Tyler, and I like that. Honestly, if that is the actual intent here, I really do like that. But my issue with interpreting it that way is the way everyone's looking at him. They all seem really angry. And if they are worried about the long-term effect on him, I want them to be coming at this with more compassion and less apparent like rage and disgust. Because there's a real sense of like, I can't believe what I am seeing in front of me. And I would like a little bit of, man, dude, I get it. I get you're hurt. Your best friend was shot, but you can't do this, man. It's going to ruin your life and you're going to be haunted by this. If they approached it with that sort of energy, I think I'd feel really differently about it. But it seems like it's just more of a disapproval and him having crossed this line that they all sort of have this tacit agreement you don't cross. B. Moore says the point wasn't them killing Envy any differently. It was just Roy doing it for the reasons he was doing it. If Envy didn't commit suicide, I'm pretty sure Riza would have just shot the tadpole a bunch. I don't think it got across very well because it seemed like it was framed like Envy didn't deserve it when everyone there agreed he did. Yeah, I think it's that, and also like Roy doing it for the reasons he was doing it. I mean, the reasons are what everybody agrees, and it just feels so valid. And the idea that we're just going to put the tadpole down and Riza's going to shoot at it a ton, being like somehow less terrible than somebody with a very valid grievance doing a thing that works, and we've seen it work. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I want Tyler's explanation to be true because I do really appreciate the approach to killing someone not being seen as an inherently evil thing to do, but something that leaves a mark and a permanent effect on your psyche, and you need to be prepared to look at whether you're ready to live with that and whether it's actually worth it. And I really do like that approach. But because Envy fucking is who he is, I just have a really hard time feeling like killing Envy here would have affected Roy in any way that would be permanently negative. It's one thing to kill somebody in a fit of rage, in a moment of passion, when you are reacting to sudden new information that you haven't given yourself time to calm down and think about. But he is reacting to the manipulation of an entire war that resulted in the extermination of a whole people and the up close and personal murder of a very close friend. And I just have a hard time imagining if I were facing somebody like that and I killed them, that the mark it would leave on me wouldn't feel totally worth it. You know, I don't know. It's just like, this is the sort of moral question that comes up in a lot of stuff because so much media is just killing is wrong. And I just don't think it always is. And it's just that simple. But we can't see the killing. We all agree that this character needs killing, but we're not going to do it in a way that will leave anybody with their hands dirty, particularly in a way that like we don't like. B. Moore says it didn't resonate much with me either, but the distinction they're going for is a normal person can satisfy their legitimate grievance like this, but the leader of a country with the power to execute anyone he may want in the future can't afford to indulge that. Great power, great responsibility, dead uncles, etc., etc. Yeah, it's just, again, you're doing it though. So you're acting like we can't let you do it, but it feels totally symbolic and kind of cowardly, where I can't help but think of like Ned Stark and the man who, you know, pronounces the judgment must swing the sword. I respect that more than you can't sully your hands. We will do it for you, which is what's happening. It just feels like removing yourself personally from the act does not change anything about the act occurring and it being something that you know is going to happen, want to happen, and would have done yourself. But what can you do? It's just like, it's a shame because this moment of victory, which is what it is for them to take Envy down, I want it to just be allowed to be a victory. And if it's going to be something where it's a real moment of like, yo, dude, don't cross that line and don't turn that corner. This show has really done some like really difficult material before. They don't shy away from things that are kind of dark. And I feel like they could have gone harder to make the point feel more understandable and realistic. And I don't know what that would look like. I don't particularly want to see it, but probably the point is that we need him to get up to the line and not actually cross it and make it seem like he is redeemable. He can walk back what he almost did in order to continue to be like a good and decent ruler. And that if we saw him start to do something really dark, there would be no faith in him actually taking over as the new Führer or whatever they are deciding to call the new position. And, all right. But I just wanted to be able to enjoy this moment a little bit because Envy's the worst. Out of everybody, I think we can all agree, Pride is like not even in the same category for me because Pride is so linked as being like the fundamental being. And even Pride with the incredibly powerful, creepy ability that he has, he doesn't have the same malice that Envy seems to have. Envy has toyed with people in a way that none of the other characters have really seemed to want to do. And if this were something that was happening with, say, lust or even gluttony, I would feel like, wow, yeah, you're pretty fucked up. But Envy, man, it's fine. Tyler says, I agree that it is a symbolic difference. I may just be going for the most charitable answer of stopping him from falling down a path of blind vengeance. Although Tyler wrote Bling Vengeance, and honestly, Tyler, Bling Vengeance is like a sick band name. So y'all heard it here first, guys. If you decide that you're going to start a band, Bling Vengeance. Right here. Tyler, giving you all the credit. Okay, so I'm just going to move on from that, but I really wanted to address it because sometimes I just want an unmitigated win against an enemy. And I wish that I had known Lust wasn't going to be brought back so that when Lust was taken down, I could appreciate the moment a little bit more. It's just seeing how Greed was remade, it felt like it was pretty easy to do. And like looking back, I understand that he wasn't functioning with the same materials that he'd have when Lust was gone. But I wish that I had savored it. But I just thought it doesn't matter. Lust is going to be brought back. So this seems like a victory now, and it ultimately isn't. But it was. And I just kind of wish I had like really known that and been able to sit back and be like, all right, a win. Because this show has very few straight up wins. All of the victories are colored by either a sort of regret over the situation happening at all, or people being involved who were otherwise innocent, or there being a victim that's beyond saving by the time that they are able to, it's very rare that we just straight up have a bad guy taken down without any other major sacrifices, because in this scene, the only creatures that go down and stay down are the like immortal soldiers. So they don't count. No offense, immortal soldiers, mannequins, but you don't count. But yeah. And the whole, he deserves the worst death possible, or I'll burn up your hand with him in it. And this is when Ed says, go ahead and try it. But is that the face you plan to wear when you lead this country? Is that what you want to be? Another monster? And he's standing there and just staring at Ed with his fingers poised to snap. And is remembering the moment where Hughes is saying, you could have asked for my support. You have my support, but you could have just asked. And Scar then chimes in, are you becoming a beast and giving in to passion? You can if you want, and I won't stop you. What right do I have to stop somebody from taking vengeance? But I shudder to think what kind of world a man held captive by his own hate would create once he becomes its ruler. And I do really like that line. I do like the held captive by his own hate. I, again, wish it just wasn't envy who he is right to hate. B. Moore says, is paraphrasing me, man, all this morality stuff is really harshing my vibe. Can't we just enjoy killing? Amen. That's kind of the whole point being made, and it doesn't stop me from agreeing with you. Incinerate him. Yeah, you know, like, I really like nuance, and I like when a character killing someone affects that character. I also do like, I will say though, when sometimes a character feels like they should feel worse and they don't. This is something that just happened at the beginning of the Sookie Stackhouse novels. There's a couple that winds up dead, and granted, they were asking for it, but the whole murder gets covered up, and Sookie just has this moment of like, I feel like I should be a lot more worried about this than I am. And I fucking died over that line because, like, she's helping to hide murders and is just kind of like, welp. And I couldn't help but think, like, there are some people that I might have that whole attitude about personally. But Scar's overall thesis of, like, if you get held captive by your hate, what will that do? If it weren't envy, maybe the point is supposed to be, even if they deserve it, it will still destroy you. And to that I say, oh well. But yeah, at the end of this is when Hawkeye says, I have no intention of letting him live, but you can't do it. You're about to do something reckless that will not help, not your country or your friends. This is pure hatred, and I will not let it take you. And again, don't worry, I'll kill him. But you just can't do it. It's fine. I just wanted to read each of the lines like exactly as they were presented, because I think it's important to really address specifically what the characters are saying, because obviously this is the lesson the show is trying to give us as well. And this is when Risa says, I have no intention of living past this moment. Once this fight is over, I am going to end my own life and take the secret of flame alchemy with me. And I don't like this. She's saying this to him in the present, even though I thought he had destroyed the information that was on her back. So why would her killing herself rid the world of this knowledge? Because, like, Roy isn't going to stop using flame alchemy, is he? And I would have to imagine if he's using it, I mean, he wants to be at like the highest station in the land. Nobody is going to ever figure out how he does what he does. It's just kind of wild, honestly, that nobody has figured it out as of yet, it seems. Or if they do, maybe it's supposed to be, yeah, they understand the basic principle, but they don't have the like exact formula for the circle that he has on his gloves. It's just the kind of thing that, like, unless you're going to lock those gloves in a guarded box every time you take them off and never drop one or have one pulled off your hand, somebody's going to figure it out. But her killing herself, it doesn't, to me, sound like that's going to really make a difference. Damien says, I think she was saying that if she had to kill him, she'd see this current situation to its end, then kill herself too. Oh, I see what you're saying, Damien. So she's not just saying I'm going to kill myself. She is saying, if you make me do this, then that's going to be the next step. So know that you're not just killing yourself, you're killing me. I don't know though, because like after she says that and he like releases his flame down the hallway, he says, that can't happen. I can't afford to lose you. And why would he say that if she was already going to have killed him? Maybe it's just a theoretic, like the world can't be without you. But the way that he said, I can't afford to lose you, made it sound like she was going to be taking herself off the map while he was still in play. But this scene ends with him saying, I can't believe that I've been lectured by a kid and a guy who used to be my enemy. And turns to Hawkeye and says, and like my oldest friend, how foolish can one man be? So, and he looks just genuinely very sad at this moment. It's a kind of a good, like, the face of somebody who is still dealing with big emotions. He doesn't just calm down. He decides that it's time to give into the actual grief that's driving him. And this is when Envy chimes in and says, are you fucking kidding me? You guys hated each other, you and Scar. Just fucking fight. Kill each other. Go ahead. Scar, this guy was the one who helped with the genocide of your entire people. And Roy, Scar is the guy who came and like killed state alchemists all the damn time. And also Scar killed the little girl who had been made into a chimera. And you guys are just standing here and talking and acting like contrite and flowery, but you have real, true, horrific things in your past, unforgivable acts, and you're just going to learn to forgive each other? I don't understand. You're just kissing and making up? How? What is wrong with you? And this leads to a really interesting moment. Envy is looking back and forth between them and is just snaps and is just like, never, you can't do this. It's impossible. And all of a sudden, Ed is like, oh, Envy. That's what it is. You're jealous of human beings. That's why you're called that. According to you, we're supposed to be nothing in comparison with homunculi. But we can get beaten and we can turn against each other and we can destroy parts of one another's lives. And then we can turn around and forgive and rebuild and move on. And you hate that. And Envy is like, you guys just don't have the logic to do what needs to be done. And this moment is so funny to me. Can you really shoot such a sad face? Can you, boy? I shouldn't be surprised. That's just how all you humans are. This time around, I'll go with a younger, cuter model. What do you say? You humans don't make any sense to me. You throw away your lives for nothing. Another foolish human. And the idea of just, you can't shoot me because you would think I'm too cute. I don't know why I thought that was so hilarious, because like in the current model, honestly, Envy is adorable. And this little tiny tadpole, I love this. This is a very cute little guy. Envy, you could stay in this form. Do this. But the whole point of this is Envy trying to instigate all of them to recall what the others have done and not getting the response that he wants. And he bites Ed's hand and lands on the floor and says, "This is humiliating. You guys are loathsome and weak and useless, but I'm small enough for you to step on. This is so sad." And then of all the scum out there, it had to be you, Pipsqueak. And Envy then starts crying. Really honest, like, I'm just going to be sad crying. Not the kind of angry tears that we have seen hinted at before, but a moment of like despair. And he throws himself onto his side, yelling about how he has been humiliated. And is saying, "You think I'm jealous of you? Of humans?" And stands up and says, "I'm a homunculus." And then, "Oh, you saw through me. This is truly the ultimate humiliation." And Envy sits up onto his tail and starts to laugh and says, "I guess we'll see how long this adorable little alliance of yours can hold up. Best of luck with that." And Envy reaches down his own throat, yanks out the Philosopher's Stone, and chucks it and dies. And it was actually a pretty great moment. The idea that Envy would be like, "You know what? Screw you, I'm doing this myself." And the way the Philosopher's Stone like explodes into blood, it's a very evocative. I really, really liked it. It was a surprise that Envy did it to himself and nobody else here actually had to. Ed seems almost mad that Envy did it, but I guess it's just because Envy got to have the last word. And I wish too that there was like a Philosopher's Stone left behind here, but it seems like the Philosopher's Stones that the homunculi are powered by, if they are left, they can just reformulate themselves around it. So I guess that wouldn't have worked. Damien says, "Fun fact, the manga chapter that the previous episode is based off of was released 5 days after the first episode of Brotherhood aired. The manga ended June 11th of the next year, with Brotherhood ending July 4th the same year. That's how tight the race between the manga and the anime became." Ooh. And B. Moore says, "Personally, while I liked how Envy turned out, it seemed a tad off theme. It didn't seem like Envy wanted to be human or be as good as humans. It seemed more like a fatal case of pride, that Envy thought he was better than humans and was being proven wrong and couldn't stand that." Yeah, I agree. Like, be more the concept of Envy being jealous of humans, I really, really like. But I agree that isn't borne out by the way they had Envy talk at the end here. The humiliation aspect is all about pride. And really what we should have had Envy saying at the end is more how completely alone he is. How there's been nobody in his life that he was able to forgive, or who was able to forgive him, or that he is always so full of rage and malice for people who have wronged him that it just literally does not compute that they are able to forgive and move forward and forge relationships. Anything that was emphasizing a sense of isolation and a feeling of I want what you have, which isn't really what we're getting here. It's more, I want you to realize you're not better than me. And that doesn't hit really the same way. B. Moreland says, I did really like the imagery with yanking out the stone. Very Moby Dick. He piled upon the whale's white hump the sum of all the general rage and hate felt by his whole race from Adam down, and then, as if his chest had been a mortar, he burst his hot heart's shell upon it. Wow. I never read Moby Dick. I'll tell you that. And that's a hell of a sentence. Damn. But I totally see what you're saying. So, okay, I really have to speed it up, guys. Damn. We go back to the fight with the Armstrongs and Sloth is like yanking that giant pillar out of his mouth. And a bunch of the military are showing up saying that they are under orders to kill General Armstrong. And this is when she comes forward and is like, I'm running the show, just so you guys all know I'm in charge now. And you better help us out or we are all going to die, because look at the things that are coming in. And long story short, there's this like big confrontation where they are all trying to take care of the mannequins while Major Armstrong by himself is trying to hold off Sloth. And he is getting the shit kicked out of him, like for real. He is holding his own, but we have not seen him take this kind of beating before. And even when he is fighting back at full power, you're starting to be like, I don't know if he's going to do this. He finally lands an uppercut on Sloth's chin. And he had gotten his shoulder injured, and after he lands this, he yells, "My shoulder is back." And I couldn't tell, is it supposed to be that like it was dislocated and then Sloth put it back? Or is it supposed to be that he is able to heal himself somehow? I'm assuming that like Sloth somehow relocated it. I don't know, is that how you say that? But anyway, after the uppercut, he starts going after Sloth with intensity. And Sloth is sort of like, it's almost like he's just taken by straight up surprise over the ferocity of the attack. So he doesn't really fight back almost at all. And eventually Major Armstrong uses alchemy to shoot spikes out of the ground. And he gets Sloth through the mouth again. This is a real theme with Sloth, is that we're going to like somehow puncture him through the brain and mouth, but also pierces his body all over. And it's treated as like a victory, but we know that Sloth has gotten completely smashed into, like, pieces of the building have been smashed into him before, and he really recovered quite quickly. So I am not certain how much this can hold him, but I guess we'll see. So this is when we go to the Armstrong estate, like the underground area, and they find like this big empty area, and they begin to realize that probably the tank that is being used to try and break through the front gates was assembled there. And even though the area around the gates is still filled with a civilian population, the general in Central is still advising them to open fire. And they're like, dude, there's just regular people around there. And he just says, I don't fucking care. Do it. And just as he gives that order, there's a huge plume of smoke. And here comes what's his face with the weird lobster claw opener, and pretty dope. I hadn't realized until like a couple episodes ago he has a mohawk, but I didn't ever notice that it dropped into a full braid. I thought it was just a straight up mohawk, but it's like the sides of his head are shaved, but the center has grown so long that he has it in a braid that reaches his butt. And honestly, I feel like that is a really good look. I don't know. I just like it. It's pretty badass. And he's like, so you were going to open fire on a civilian population. Cool. And this dude is like, where the hell did you come from? Who could pull this off? And here comes Izumi walking in. When I say I'm just a housewife, it does make sense. But today I've shed that particular disguise. I am an alchemist. And then we get the end credits, which I didn't watch because I am afraid. But we do have a mid-credit scene, which I was able to find. And Hempstool has walked into the lair where Father is sitting on his like weird throne and says, you came alone. I thought you'd bring your boys with you. And Hempstool is like, what would I need them for? I can deal with you. You're pitiful. You're still a dwarf in a flask. And Father stands up and gets released from those weird pipes, hoses that he was attached to, and says, and you're still slave number 23, aren't you? You gave me part of your body. Today, all these many years later, you will become a part of mine. And that is the end of that mid-credit scene. So, is he just like, I don't know. What is he going to try and do? What would absorbing Hempstool do for him even? I'm just, what? Why? And it sounds like he wishes Ed and Al were there because he could have used them too. And I don't know if that's just like me misinterpreting what he meant when he said, why I thought you'd bring your kids with you. I don't know. I still feel like I don't get. I had so much of my interpretation of what the homunculi were after wrapped up in these mannequins that were being held ready to be released at a given time. But they were released early, and the father doesn't seem to care. There's no sense from him of frustration. You were supposed to wait. They weren't ready. I had a plan for them. And I have to assume he's aware that's happening because he's connected to his weird children, and Pride is still out there. Envy was out there confronting them. So the fact that Father seems to really not give a shit about them points to them not actually being that significant to what his ultimate goal is. And if that isn't it, I don't know what it is. Is it just that he isn't truly human and wants to be? And so maybe that's like part of the distilling emotions away. Is like, I'm trying to figure out what it means to be a person and do that. But I don't know. So yeah, I really did like this episode. I know that I gave it a hard time for a lot of points, but I still liked it. I just didn't really agree with the conclusions it was drawing. And I understand them. It just felt like within the context of what was actually happening, it didn't quite work. But y'all know that I'm a fan of debates. I like to open up a question and not really know how I feel about it one way or another initially. Or think I really know how I feel about it. And then the instant I hear somebody else's argument go, oh, wait, because that'll happen. But I like Tyler's interpretation, and I really want that to be it. So I'm just going to go with it because it feels like it aligns with what the show is trying to tell me, even if I don't feel like it really told me that effectively. This is chapter 54, so we have officially 10 episodes to go. Only 10. Guys, we're coming down to the wire here. It's crazy. The end of an era. The whole vibe of August is wrapping on a bunch of stuff that has been a long coverage. Once I get into late September and October, I'm going to either be wrapped on things and ready to start a new thing, or I will be already starting a new thing. So it's weird how it always seems to line up in several seasons or different series of things will all end at the same time. But it'll be weird to not have this one ending my day every day. I've been in this rhythm for so long now. I've covered book series and stuff that have gone a long time, but they weren't all pre-booked the entire series almost ever. So having this marking the end of my day for 64 episodes, it just feels like part of things now, Anyway, yeah. So anyway, thank you, Max, for commissioning this. Appreciate you. After this is wrapped, Max has commissioned the rest of season 2 of What We Do in the Shadows. So I'm very excited about starting that. If anybody wants to commission the 3rd season, it still hasn't been taken care of. So, to prevent a long distance what's the period, I suppose, of no coverage in which I may forget things, you can help pay for that one if you want. Also, if there's another series that somebody is interested in pre-booking, let me know, because I'm open right now, and anything that somebody wants to completely pre-book gets priority over something that the group is interested in funding together, because people will say that but not necessarily follow through, whereas a pre-booking is a sure thing. So yeah, email me at unspoiledpodcast@gmail.com if any of you are interested in starting a new thing. And Damien says, I wonder if the start of the race between the anime and the manga made her need to truncate this chapter when she could have done an extra chapter on it. That's interesting. The idea, the race is happening, so maybe she forgoes story because it would take too long. That's an interesting question. I'd be curious to see if anybody poses that question to her in an interview somewhere, if she got specific on it, or maybe if she released some follow-up stuff after and it expanded on certain things more. It might be evidence to the fact that she did have other ideas and just didn't have time to do them. But yeah, that's interesting. All right. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap, but thank you again very much to all of you for coming and to Max for commissioning. And until Friday, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.